Good day, good evening, good morning, whatever time it is, wherever you are. I hope it's a good one, beginning good, good through, and good towards the ending. This is Michael with Remember Presence on with the fourth session of an introduction to mindfulness meditation, ideas and practices. So let's start for a moment with our short sit, arriving where we are. Find your best way to sit just for the next few moments. Now we'll continue to call this a sit, but you can sit, lie, or stand on a chair, the floor, a cushion, bench, whatever way your body's comfortable and at ease on the earth. And if, as we go through these meditations and trainings, you find your body uncomfortable, you can notice this and work with it mindfully for a time, and then feel free to change posture or just move, doing so in a mindful way. So, in accepting the invitation for presence just now, right now, allow yourself to look around where you are, right here, opening mindfulness, awareness to the body and senses, and outside the body. With eyes open, see the colors around you in the room, the computer screen, the windows, the light or the darkness. And as you look around, relax and let yourself just take in your environment. And when you're ready, bring your attention back to yourself seated here. Allow your eyes to close and relax more fully. Let the eyes and face be soft. Loosen the jaw. Let the shoulders relax and the arms and hands rest easily. So you're seated with a sense of dignity and alertness. And at the same time, a deep invitation of presence and relaxation. And begin to notice the play of experience as you sit quietly. Notice the sounds that come and go. You can also notice if there's any sense of smell or taste. Odors from the flowers on a table nearby, or someone cooking down the street, or even some sense memory that the words that I'm using might evoke. You can notice the body sensations, the feeling of pressure where your body meets surfaces, areas of ease or tightness, warmth or cool, vibration or stillness, pleasure or pain. It's the feel of this entire body received with a kind attention. You can notice the state of the heart as well. Is there interest or gratitude or sadness and grief or excitement or tenderness? Does the heart feel open or closed? So without any judgment, just noticing life for you as it is right now. And when you're ready, open your eyes. So to begin the teaching, some traditions with a contemplative flavor consider thinking the highest of the senses. Mindfulness of thoughts is practiced much as mindfulness of the body, of sensations and emotions, observing these in our experience as products of the body-mind. One of the most freeing aspects of investigating the mind comes from examining our thoughts. Now, most of the time we're lost in the movies of our minds and not even aware of the fact that we're thinking. But as we become more mindful of thought as an object of awareness, we begin to notice what we're thinking. And then, on a deeper level, wisdom sees the very ephemeral, impermanent nature of thought. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche points to the freedom that's possible with this kind of understanding. He says, when a rainbow appears, we see many beautiful colors. Yet, a rainbow is not something we can clothe ourselves with or wear as an ornament. It simply appears through the conjunction of various conditions. Thoughts arise in the mind in just the same way. They have no tangible reality or intrinsic existence at all. Therefore, there is no logical reason why thoughts should have so much power over us, nor any reason why we should be enslaved by them. Once we recognize that thoughts are empty, the mind will no longer have the power to deceive us. But as long as we take our deluded thoughts as real, they will continue to torment us mercilessly, as they have been doing through countless pasts. So, just as it's possible to direct attention to the breath, emotions, body sensations, or to sounds, the same mindful, loving awareness can be directed to observe thought. To experiment and understand this, try a 1-minute practice of counting your thoughts. Get comfortable physically. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. And bringing attention to the breath in the body. No doubt you will notice picture thoughts and word thoughts arise. Some people think primarily in images and others in words, and some have the audio and visual thoughts coming together. Just notice. There might also be very soft thoughts that come in the background saying things like, mm-hmm, there haven't been many thoughts yet. When the bell rings, your job is to sit for 1 minute like a cat at the mouse hole and simply number the thoughts when they appear. Ready? So that's about a minute. So how many thoughts did you count? Is it less than 10? Between 10 and 20? Between 20 and 30? More than 30? Those are the common intervals. The number doesn't matter, if you only counted a few, Naturally, it doesn't mean you had necessarily fewer thoughts. Perhaps some of them were longer than others. What's important to communicate now is that you realize that it's possible to step outside that ever-flowing stream of thoughts and witness them with mindful, loving awareness. And we can't help but experience more than the whisper of the number we give them. Were the thoughts soft, or were they loud? Were they insistent? Were they picture thoughts? Because how many of us have primarily picture thoughts, and how many have word thoughts with no pictures? How many have the video and audio portion together? And how many seem to multiply and branch out, spawning, branching, associating, and elaborating on previous thoughts? Some thoughts might have been more emotionally tangy, like, I'm really not doing this right. The value of this turning inward and observing is seeing that we become aware of thoughts. As we become aware of them, we get a sense of what's been called seeing the waterfall. That there really is an endless stream of thoughts, commentary, sometimes memories, plans, judgments. And especially for those of you that are new to meditation, it can be discouraging. Many new meditators judge themselves and come to the conclusion of, well, I have a really busy mind, so I'm not really cut out for this. I'm just not doing it right. I did, on and off, for a while. And so then it's just another project we've taken on that we get to feel a sense of failure in. One more indication that we're really not worthy. Remember this. Having a lot of thoughts is not our own personal pathology. Our mind secretes thoughts like our body secretes enzymes. All our minds. And that's part of our evolutionary design, to be thinking a lot. It's part of our impact on the universe as a species, for better or worse, as we know. But mostly it's not our fault. It's not a fault. We're rigged to scan for danger. Our prehistoric brain is an alert system. And many people still think with and through their bodies. There are so many different ways of thinking. One of the things that happens when we begin to really pay attention to the thought stream is we notice how many are reruns. 90% of the thoughts that we're having are reruns from some past show, often many times repeated, like network television late at night if you were alive before cable. And we come to realize that a lot of it is fake news, yeah? Also, we have a default network in our brain that we might encounter as we're flicking through the channels. If we're not occupied with a formal task, our brain automatically starts scanning the past and the future to keep us orienting in time and orienting us in our narrative of self, to stabilize us as we write, rehearse, and rewrite our movie as it rolls. Do you ever feel like you're performing improv? I do. And I've never been particularly good at improv. And we can't seem to step off stage because being aware of the play of our experience and the ever-changing script is not about trying to stop the thoughts. But what if I want to? Isn't that what meditation's for? We have lots of stories, reruns, recordings, movies, unpublished scripts. More often than not, we have the starring role. Some call our default thinking mode selfing, which makes a good note to use as we note the play of experience with words. What becomes liberating is to begin to notice the thought process itself and what's going on in there. When we're walking down the street or we're meeting people or we're having a conversation at work or with our family or working with others on some project or just walking in the woods. And meanwhile, the inner dialogue is just going on and we're talking to ourselves and we're making commentary and we're planning, usually mostly below that line of consciousness and totally out of control. Dr. Lawrence Pelz tells us that much of our thinking is about the past, which we believe we know, or the future, which we don't. So by predicting the future based on the past, we hope to get a sense of the future, but at a great cost. By thinking we know when we don't, like, the future will be the same as the past or very much like it, we avoid the anxiety of not knowing. But we're exposed to the vulnerability of our blind spot, which is don't know, we don't know. A key element of mindfulness training is to build the muscles of not knowing. You'll hear that referred to often as beginner's mind. It's a great place to be. Now, mind states are a sort of aggregated, or an aggregate of thoughts. And mind states, they're all about the future, some of them. And we get to note these with a word or two quietly to ourselves as we meditate, as sort of a bowing in recognition. So, mind states about the future. Anxiety comes from not knowing. It's fueled by fear, which most often has a physical, emotional feeling base. So we might note anxiousness as it arises, or aversion. Now, worry is a child of anxiety and has a feeling of pressure or desperation. It often involves conflict, attention, and there's a sense that there's no winning, which leads to more worries and a tendency to make poor decisions, or to just suffer in silence. Now, planning has more of a stabilizing feel. It feels right. It's like preparing for living. We like to imagine that we think about the future from a place grounded in the present, looking at priorities, values, goals, and possible strategies. Unfortunately, any future is not at all a sure thing. All of the alternatives we consider have uncertain outcomes, and it's all in our head, happening in this very moment anyway, out of our control. We can't control our thoughts and feelings or control what other people are thinking or doing, and that's really something to worry about, isn't it? The good news is we can control where we direct our attention and our actions. Mindfulness meditation helps us to develop the stability to see our efforts at controlling what we can't and how this causes us to suffer. Some of us are familiar with the serenity prayer. Grant us the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So one of the gifts of practice is to notice more and more, what is our style of thinking? What are the patterns? Do we notice the content domain or theme first? Or are we looking for a certain feeling tone? Are they thoughts mostly about the future? If they are, we probably begin to notice those stories that have a kind of anxiety behind them. Trying to manage all the details, the strategic plan, the personnel. It can be daunting writing our play as we act in it. Or is there a sense of longing in them? Are they thoughts about the past? We might notice themes of grief or love or guilt or nostalgia. That not quite remembering. Now, with this new information and lenses, we begin to look with awareness, with loving awareness, into the mind itself. The first step for us in working with the storytelling mind is to notice the endless stream of thoughts and commentary that play along with our moment-to-moment experience. Almost everyone who first sits to meditate is eventually startled by this process. Even though we try to focus our attention on our breath, or body, or prayer, we are interrupted by a torrent of ideas, memories, plans. One Buddhist meditation teacher says the average person has 17,000 thoughts a day. The thoughts do think themselves. The thought production isn't bad. It's simply what the mind does. There's a cartoon you might have seen. It shows a car on a long western desert highway. And a roadside sign warns, your own tedious thoughts, next 200 miles. Buddhist psychology directs us to investigate both the content of those thoughts and the process of thinking itself. It helps us work with thoughts in two ways. First, teaches us how to acknowledge the content of our thoughts. Second, we learn the ability to disentangle from them. When we examine our thought stream with mindfulness, we encounter the inner soundtrack. As it plays, we can become the hero, the victim, the princess, or the leper. There's a whole drama department in our head, and the casting director is indiscriminately handing out the roles of inner dictators and judges, adventurers and prodigal sons, inner entitlement and inner impoverishment. Sitting in a meditation class, we're forced to acknowledge them all. Anne Lamott writes, my mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try not to go there alone. Sayadaw U Tejaniya offers a great guide to practice for the newcomer. I'm quoting Sayadaw. When the mind is thinking or wandering, just be aware of it. Thinking is a natural activity of the mind. You're doing well if you're aware that the mind is thinking. But if you feel disturbed by thoughts, or if you have a reaction or judgment of them, there is a problem with your attitude. The wandering mind is not the problem. Your attitude that they should not be around is the problem. So understand that you have just become aware of some functions of the mind. These too are just objects for your attention. Thinking is a mental activity. When you are new to this practice, you should not try to watch thinking continuously. Neither should you try to avoid observing thoughts by immediately going to your primary meditation object, to your anchor, and hanging on for dear life. When you realize that you're thinking, always pay attention to the thought first, and then remind yourself that a thought is just a thought. Do not think of it as my thought. Now you can return to your primary meditation object, your anchor. When you feel disturbed by the thinking mind, remind yourself that you're not practicing to prevent thinking, but rather to recognize and acknowledge thinking whenever it arises. If you're not aware, you cannot know what you're thinking. The fact that you recognize that you're thinking means that you are aware. Remember that it does not matter how many times the mind thinks, wanders off, or gets annoyed about something, as long as you become aware of it. There are dimensions of our human experience: love, care, connection, presence, mystery, attunement to one another that have nothing to do with the dimension of thought. When thought quiets down, we're able to make ourselves or attune ourselves to be available to the world in a different way. It's a miraculous capacity with the mind, to observe the mind. With mindfulness of consciousness, which we also call loving awareness, we can become the one who knows, the witnessing one that observes the workings of the mind. When we begin to pay attention in this way, we start becoming familiar with the inner landscape of thoughts and beliefs that run our world. It's pretty much constant. The mind secretes thoughts the way the salivary gland secretes saliva. It just does. And they keep coming through. Words and images and ideas and visions and memories and plans, often referred to as seeing the waterfall. So someone comes to me and I invite them to sit quietly and sense their breath and body and notice what's happening. And their eyes spring open at the end and they say, I couldn't stop thinking. I was planning, I was remembering, I was judging, I was imagining, I was analyzing, and there was this huge stream of thoughts. Great. And for some people, that's an enormous moment of clarity, just to realize how much is going on there because they're so identified with it. And it's visions and ideas and voices and storms, struggles, dualities, suffering. And the waters create much of our world, carving landscape, thinking language, organizations, all manner of forms and phenomena, all these things we name and live with, and our human relationships. When we lovingly observe our thoughts rise and fall, so ephemeral and without real substance, we begin to realize that the thought of our mother is not our mother. This is a really profound thing to say. I know it sounds silly, but a lot of people don't know the difference. Believing that we are our thoughts. And we can take years of our life following loyalty to misguided thoughts. Nations do it, societies do it in child rearing, carrying them and believing them like legends. Stories about life to share and pass down. So there's a kind of tenderness to think of every child that's born with this beautiful innocent spirit and the different ways that our conditioning and thoughts start to occur. And prejudice and misguided understanding can shrink and diminish and judge and limit a human being. But it's not who we are. It can be liberating to see that the beliefs and the ways they structure the world are not necessarily the way that it is, and that below our stories and beliefs and between the lines is a nature nearer to true, inviting us to lean toward a mind that is less mine and more ours. Let's take a few minutes for self-care, an invitation to stand and stretch. Quick walk, grab a fresh beverage, whatever. I'll ring the bell to bring us back. So now you're invited to include mindfulness of thought in your general mindfulness meditation practice. So let's practice that now. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Bring your attention to your breath or other chosen anchor. As you follow the sensations of your breathing or the sensations in your body, there will be a stream of thoughts in the background. Let them be. Let them rise and fall like waves of the ocean around the breath. But periodically, whether after 3 breaths or 6 breaths or 10 breaths, a strong thought will arise and carry the attention away. We often call that distraction. As soon as you notice this thought, name it gently according to its dominant quality. So you can use simple notes like planning, remembering, judging, worrying, imagining, or fearful thought, happy thought, interesting thought, creative thought, painful thought, and so forth. Simply naming and acknowledging the thought supports the witnessing quality of mindful loving awareness. Once you've noticed a thought gently for some time, you'll notice that it dissolves like a cloud under sunlight. Thoughts are ephemeral. They are empty. They have no substance except what we invest in them. After the thought has diminished, simply return again to mindfulness of breath and body for a time until another strong experience, whether it's a thought or an emotion or a sound, pulls your attention from the breath. And, it's like training a puppy. When you notice that your mind has wandered from the breath, note that distraction with a word or two and return to your home base in the present moment. Breathe. So, stepping out of the stories that thought tells, you can see the common patterns of thought without being so caught in them. And more importantly, you begin to rest in the field of mindful loving awareness rather than being repeatedly carried away by thought. Now you can alternate mindfulness of breathing with mindfulness of other strong experiences when they arise. You become a steady, loving witness of all that arises and passes. You become a peaceful one, sitting still amidst the rising and falling waves of experience. When you are ready, please open your eyes. So lastly, as you practice, there's some noting and inquiry strategies you might take as you relate to thoughts. And feel free to write me and request this list of investigative prompts. So, some things you can do. You can notice how it feels the very moment you shift from being absorbed or lost in thought to simply name it without being swept into it. You can notice which types of thought really have an effect on your body. What thoughts trigger you most? What is their bodily effect? You can notice how some thoughts automatically bring strong emotions with them and how some emotions automatically bring up certain thoughts. We get to learn to witness that kind of interplay between thought and emotion. A lot of patterns in there. One thing that I love to do is I love to notice the experience of the space between thoughts. Space is my element. You can deliberately bring up a sad thought, an angry thought, or a loving thought, just to explore, just to test. Notice how powerfully these thoughts and their connected emotions affect the whole state of your body and mind. And as always, you can imagine that you are the open sky and thoughts float through like clouds. Sense what it's like to shift from thinking to lovingly noticing the clouds. And we can always ask ourselves, what am I believing right now? Many contemplative traditions with practices, rituals, focused learning, and dialogue close their meeting with a dedication practice. It's about not keeping what's good just for ourselves and our immediate circle of loved ones. It's a radical act of generosity. There are limitless forms of dedication. With your permission, I will verbalize it. Let us dedicate all the value accrued through prayer, contemplation, meditation, and practice for the benefit of all beings and to the incomparable expanse of totality. Hope to see you soon. Be so well.